Hello and welcome to number 7, we think, of the podcast Check Your Connections by Dimensions Council. And we are now going to more of the mortal side of communications, not using the Ouija boards and summoning and satanic stuff like we talked in the last podcast. So this week's podcast is about communication, and we have Kate, who's here to talk about Makaton.
Hello, I'm Kate Chait and I'm one of the families team at Dimensions. But we've also been a Makaton using household for 20 odd years, and I've become a Makaton tutor and am now one of the tutors rolling out Makaton training to our colleagues in Dimensions.
So we have changed a little bit of the podcast as the intro. So the intro music is slightly delayed a little bit, so you don't have to instantly hear it as it comes on, but it's just that. If you have continuously gone through the beginning, you'll know the format we are slowly starting to set up. So if you haven't and you've randomly clicked on this one, we would like to explain what it is. It is the Dimensions Council update, which we will bring in you. We will also talk about the Lingo Bingo at the end. And then we will also talk about the download and find out what Kate is up to in her spare time. We are also going to talk to Key Richardson, who is an operations director who is up in the north, and she will
West.
who is in the west, who is the chair of a communications group in Dimensions. This month we are talking about communications. Now, communications is quite a fundamental sort of thing that you need in life. It completely varies over what type of communications people use, whether that's pictures, sign language, small chunks of information. I'm pleased that we have Kate, who is with us, who's of course the Makaton trainer that's going to help across dimensions, which of course I like Kate. So Kate, can you talk about Makaton training?
Yes, and thank you for that very lovely introduction. So Makaton is a communications program that's been designed back in the 1970s to help people. It was first designed to help people with learning disabilities to have a way to communicate and a program to support people to develop their language skills. And it involves speech, most importantly, and signing and some symbols, little kind of drawing pictures that really help to give people a way to communicate.
Yeah, I remember hearing about Makaton when I was in all those years ago when I was in primary school, and of course that was they did have a special needs resource space at the school, and that's how I sort of learned about Makaton.
Yeah, since it's become really clear that Makaton isn't just helpful for people with learning disabilities. It's really helpful for autistic people and for people with kind of neurodivergence, different ways of learning, people who are learning English as a second language, people who have physical disabilities, people who have degenerative diseases. It's really, really turns out to be a really super way to help people learn the language. So a degenerative disease or condition is where you probably won't get better. If you learn Makaton, as your a disease progresses and changes, once you lose the ability to speak words, you can continue to use Makaton and understand the language.
Do you think Makaton should be taught in schools throughout the course of education?
Yes, I absolutely do. And it is taught in a lot of schools. But yes, it will benefit every classroom because everyone learns in a different way. And because it holds your attention, it's helpful for every type of learner. So people who process what they hear um, more slowly than what they see. You know, it's a visual language as well as a listening one. So
Yeah.
lots of people are really supported by what they can see.
Do you think people like me who are like I think it's like low support needs that we say now would be great to learn Makaton?
Yes, I think it's really helpful if you learn Makaton, if particularly if you're going to be communicating with people, other people that we support in your quality checking role. You can, you know, if you can communicate with more people, then you learn how they think and feel.
Yeah, because I think it's like um when people support those with more higher support needs and more higher communication needs, the people that have great communication needs in the verbal sense and stuff, I feel like they should be supported to learn the stuff alongside support workers and stuff like that, and that's what I'm quite passionate about. Do you see like the future for them doing that?
Yeah, I think the great thing about Makaton is that you don't have to have learnt Makaton to be supported to understand when someone's using Makaton and talking to you. So you can, if someone's communicating to you using Makaton,
Yeah,
whether you've learnt Makaton or not, it
yeah,
helps you to understand what they're saying.
yeah,
Yeah, so absolutely. And the other good thing about Makaton is that as uh people who are quick like we are to talk quickly, it actually
yeah.
slows you down, which also gives the person you're talking to an opportunity to process what you're saying.
It's an easy side.
Oh yeah, so drink, that's a good example because actually it's quite easy to describe it. So if you put your hand in the C shape
Yeah,
and tip your wrist.
yeah,
I mean, most people use this sign naturally without ever having learnt Makaton, but you put your
yeah.
thumb to your mouth and then tip your hand. So it
And
looks
it's
like you're
very,
holding a cup and tipping it into your mouth. The thing with Makaton is you would do that sign and say the word. The really
yeah,
important thing is you say drink while you're making the movement of doing the sign for drink. The people that designed the program, Makaton, took the signs from British Sign Language. And British Sign Language is the communication method for the deaf community in
yeah.
the UK. And I don't know if you've seen people doing sign language interpretation on the tellies.
1 o'clock news on the BBC, they have the interpretation. And I think when they were shaking their hands like unsure sort of way, I
Hmm.
think that meant the earthquake in Turkey, because that's what they
So
were talking about.
when you see people doing that
Yeah,
sign language interpretation, you'll see that they're just signing and they're not talking. You can't hear what they're saying
yeah,
and they're not actually speaking. They do quite a lot of gesture and mouth movements, but
yeah.
it's all signing. So when you're using Makaton, you don't sign every word. You just sign the words that are going to be the most helpful to help somebody understand the sentence that you're speaking.
And also it Makaton is based on the language of that country, isn't it? And that region.
Makaton
Yeah.
in England, in the UK, is English. It's teaching people English, the English language. However, it takes the signs from our local sign language, deaf community sign language, from British sign language.
I think it's important that the for council members to have the podcast in case they find it hard, like read or something, and they can listen to it while they're like maybe cooking or their food or something along with their support workers. I think communication is very very wide and people need different ones. Like there's people that have that would read braille, and that's very different, and there's people who might need who communicate by lip reading as well, and that's one of their methods. And we have assistive technology now that can help that, you know, if it's a simple device on your phone to do it. Yeah, that's what we need, and we need to make sure we have loads of different ways to communicate with people.
I've been part of the communication group that Vicky's running, and there's a huge kind of understanding in sort of every department of Dimensions that we could do much better at supporting people to communicate, and much better at supporting our colleagues to communicate with the people that they're supporting. So that's what this great big piece of work is all about, is not just Makaton, but helping everyone to communicate, because we're offering person-centered support. We need to know what people think and feel and want, and we can only do that if we can ask them.
This week I caught up with Key Richardson, who is the leader of the communications project in Dimension. Hello, Vicky.
Hello, Chelsea, and thank you for inviting me to the podcast.
So, I think this podcast is all about communications, and we all wanted to invite you along to find out more about your project and basic skills and tips and stuff. So, Vicky, what's been happening?
We have a project together, a group of people throughout Dimensions with all a common interest and a real passion in communicating effectively with people with support. And that's both looking at people's giving and receiving information. So it's about the way people communicate with us and the way we communicate with people. So the communication project is really at the epicenter of our values. It's all about dignity and respect, really, about the way that we value people. The project, we've got 3 main key areas that we've decided to filter the project down into, and that is learning and development, which is like awareness and training. We're looking at we're looking at inclusive tech, assistive technology and equipment, software and apps. And we're also looking at documentation and paperwork support planning. Whatever we do, we need communication for good support to happen. How is a person-centred plan accessible for the person to be involved with?
When I was at my old supported living, that some of the support, one of the support worker was like quite in tune with me, and now I've got a support worker that is always asking one question after that after another, and then asks to stop. So it seems quite a wide range of how we support people.
Yeah, and I think the word that you use, in tune, is such a good descriptive word to explain communication, and it is being in tune with someone, isn't it? And
Yeah.
everyone's in tune is different. Like you say, you don't like lots of questions. Other people, it may be just that someone needs some time to tolerate someone in their space and understand communication that's not necessarily intentional, a touch or a gesture or a smile. It can be as early as those kind of small but so important gestures of communication.
It also sometimes it depends how often you are with someone as well.
I think we've all had experiences in our lives where, you know, there's certain times where maybe we feel upset, frightened, where communication may not be, you know, we might not be at the best of our communication ability, or if we feel overwhelmed. Everyone experiences that. You know, one of the most important aspects of a team is good communication and friendships and relationships. It's something that we all must be aware of, and different people like different types of communication. There's cultural differences, there's differences if people have got vision impairments, hearing impairments, and the way in which they need to access information. So everyone is so very different. So, you know, development or that communication, it can take years for someone to really put the trust in you, whereas other people, you know, may be able to rattle off a conversation quite quick and easily. To be aware of the person's communication needs. So is it that they need an object to let them know that they're about to go out for a walk? So give them shoes or some keys or something like that. Is it that somebody needs pictures and that you can help them to be able to make choices and decisions about their lives using pictures and books and stories? There's so many different resources out there. There's a lot of elements to a really good quality conversation. Some people may want to look at your face, other people may not be at that stage where that's way too invasive, and actually the communication you may have with them is just around someone tolerating being in their space. So we must be aware of that when supporting people.
How do our listeners learn more? Do they have to attend a rally? Do they have to like put war paint on to come and listen to your communications group?
Well, I'm all for war
Do they
paint.
do they have to have a big banner as well to make sure the communication is sent to the communication?
What they want to do and let them crack on. But yeah, so what people would need to do really is just maybe asking the person for support or looking at the support plan. Is it reflective and supportive of to know how best to communicate with that person? Space and time and the pause, you know, give people the opportunity to absorb information and then to react and respond is another good way. We're creating resources for colleagues in Dimensions for everyone to be able to access and that are available, but there is tons of really useful resources out there already, and apps and websites. We're also we've devised a list of people that may have little expertise in certain areas, and we're looking for people to add to that list. So if you've got, you know, a particular topic that you've experienced in the past that you're good at or you've been involved with, let us know, because someone else may find your skills useful and we can share those skills.
Thank you, Vicky.
Thank you for inviting me.
So the council that we're talking in January, we were talking about the cost of living, mental health, staying safe online and connecting with our regions. Our regions are in England and Wales. This is important to the council that we do this year. If anyone out there wants to help with either of those 4 subjects, then please send it to the Dimensions email at the end of the podcast. The gallery session was on the cost of living and mental health, and we talked about the connection with that. And I think it was because we've all been stressed out by the cost of living and, you know, finding it hard to do things. Some of our council members went to the Every Penny Counts webinar to learn how to save money.
There's a big link between mental health and being able to communicate well. So it's important to be able to give people the language to talk about their mental health.
And now we are going into the download section, which might be a thing Kate might like. Our download section is to talk about things we do in our spare time. Hey, what have you been doing? Anything interesting?
In my
TV?
spare time?
Yeah.
I don't get a lot of that, but I have been trying to read more books in real life. I listen to a lot of audiobooks, but I'm trying to start reading again. I used to read an awful lot and I love reading, but it's difficult to fit it in, so I'm trying to do reading.
Hide and move somewhere.
Yeah, I need a little nest, don't I?
Yeah.
What sort of stuff do you read?
Well, I like fiction. At the moment, I'm listening to lots of detective stuff.
Yeah.
But what I actually buy in real life books is kind of, sort of stuff about being a good mum and supporting people with learning disabilities and communication issues and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm slowly getting through Greta Thunberg's book on the climate.
Wow. Done.
It's on the floor at the moment, but yeah.
Has she managed to make it inspiring, or is it just depressing?
Well, there's loads of people around the world have contributed to that, so it's a bit like, oh, okay. The last few days I've got very into writing my tattoo series, which is the alternative autism universe, and that one's about it's just a whole universe of people with autism and learning disability.
Nobody has more ideas than you. You're like an ideas machine.
That's what I've put as my Wattpad name, the ideas machine. So our last bit is the bingo lingo.
Challenge the lingo, 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 challenge the lingo, bingo!
This one is about challenging the lingo bingo and saying I'm not non-verbal, I don't use words. So what we mean by that is spoken words, which is very different. Sort of a subject that you need to like sometimes describe people, but you have to do it in a I think because of our values, it's like a respectable way.
I think as well, if you don't mind me interjecting,
No, you can.
Is that sometimes when people say they are non-verbal, they also go on to say they can't communicate, when actually everyone can communicate. It's just some people may not use words to communicate. So we don't say non-verbal, we say don't use words to communicate. And then we know that they do communicate, they just use a different way.
Like you can say they don't use words, but they use, as we've been saying, Makaton. And we can sort of say that they they use an iPad or something, which isn't,
or sounds or gestures or another device, or
you could say they don't use physical touch, couldn't you? I think maybe ancient stereotypes and prejudice might have been that they might have been stupid. I think it's like the humanization of it, sort of like to make sure they are treated a bit more like a human. And there's variations of why people can't use words. We're going to say goodbye now. Thank you for Kate for joining us and Vicky. And if you really are desperately wanting to talk to Dimensions Council, we've got an email address, And do you know what? They absolutely love being bombarded by emails, but that's not just because it's someone else needs to bombard them. So the bombarding emails is dimensions@dimensions-uk.org. It doesn't have to be words. It could be a video. It could be getting your support worker to write it. If you are absolutely wanting to find the rest of these podcasts and have not been able to find them, you can go to YouTube, Dimensions UK, then go to our playlist, which is Check Your Connection. So Check Your Connection is the Dimensions Council podcast. Bye bye.
Bye bye. Thanks for having me.
This is getting more about the communication problem. Of me having communication problem than that. What was I saying?